the Glassblower of Alexandria, a day in Roman times. Welcome to ancient Alexandria, one of the jewels of the Roman Empire. The year is 150 CE, and we're about to step into a world of fire, sand, and breath, the world of a Roman glassblower. Imagine walking through the streets of this magnificent city. Around you rise marble columns and painted facades. The famous lighthouse of Alexandria towers in the distance, guiding ships laden with goods from across the known world. But we're not heading to the grand palaces or the legendary library. Instead, we're making our way to the western edge of the city, where the air grows thick with smoke and the temperature rises with each step. This is the artisan quarter, where glass blowers have established their workshops. These workshops double as family homes, creating neighborhoods defined by heat, noise, and the constant glow of furnaces that burn day and night for weeks or months at a time. And this is where our story begins. Today, you'll experience what it was truly like to be a glassblower in Roman Alexandria. Not through dry facts alone, but through the lived reality of those who shaped molten glass into objects of beauty and utility. You'll feel the heat of the furnace, understand the rhythm of the work, and discover how these craftsmen helped transform glass from a rare luxury into an everyday material that would change the world. The City of Wonders. Let's begin by understanding why Alexandria became one of the ancient world's premier glassmaking centers. Founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, Alexandria had grown into a metropolis of perhaps 500,000 people by the Roman period. It was a true melting pot. Egyptian, Greek, and Roman beliefs blended in daily life, creating a unique cultural tapestry where ancient Egyptian traditions met Greek philosophy and Roman pragmatism. The city's location was perfect for trade. Situated on Egypt's Mediterranean coast, it connected the wealth of Egypt and the East with markets throughout the Roman Empire. Ships arrived daily at its harbors, some carrying raw materials for craftsmen, others departing with finished goods, including the glass we'll be discussing today. Why Alexandria for glass? First, sand quality directly affected glass clarity, and Egypt had exceptional deposits. The desert sands of Egypt were rich in silica, with relatively few impurities. While not all sand is suitable for glassmaking, it needs to be relatively pure and have the right grain size. Egyptian craftsmen knew exactly where to source the best material. They understood that impurities caused unwanted green or brown tints in the finished glass, so locating the purest sand deposits was crucial to their craft. Second, natron sources were tightly controlled commodities, and Egypt had virtually a monopoly on this essential ingredient. Natron, a naturally occurring sodium carbonate found in dry lake beds, was essential as a flux. It lowered the melting point of sand, making glass production feasible with the furnace temperatures ancient craftsmen could achieve. The Wadi Natron, located in the desert west of the Nile Delta, provided an almost limitless supply of this crucial material. Control over natron gave Egyptian glassmakers a significant economic advantage. Third, Alexandria benefited from centuries of Egyptian expertise with glass. Long before the Romans arrived, Egyptian craftsmen had been producing glass vessels, beads, and decorative objects through labor-intensive core forming and casting techniques. Fourth, Alexandria sat at the crossroads of trade routes, meaning access to the colorants that created the prized hues in Roman glassware. Cobalt was used for deep blue glass, while copper created turquoise and green shades. Manganese helped neutralize color, allowing glassmakers to produce clearer glass when desired. All these materials flowed through Alexandria's markets, giving local craftsmen access to a complete palette of possibilities. The revolution of glassblowing. But something revolutionary happened in the late 1st century BCE that would transform the glass industry forever. Someone, somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean, possibly in Syria or along the Phoenician coast, invented glassblowing. This innovation was as significant in its time as the invention of the printing press or the assembly line. Suddenly, instead of painstakingly building up a vessel around a clay core or casting glass in molds, a craftsman could gather molten glass on the end of a hollow iron tube, blow air into it, and in minutes shape a vessel that might have taken hours or days using earlier methods. The technique spread rapidly. Within a generation, glass-blowing workshops had appeared throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. Alexandria, with its access to materials, its existing tradition of glassworking, and its trade connections, was perfectly positioned to capitalize on this new technology. By the time of the Roman Empire's height in the 2nd century CE, Alexandrian styles influenced glass across the Roman Empire. Merchants in Rome, soldiers on Hadrian's Wall, and wealthy villa owners in North Africa might all own vessels blown in Alexandria. Simple bottles were affordable to common people, while luxury glass could rival silver in cost, creating a market that served everyone from laborers to aristocrats. Blue glass arrived via caravan from distant mines. The fuel for his furnace was a constant concern. Wood was transported from afar for furnaces, as local supplies had been depleted by centuries of use. Rising fuel costs affected vessel prices directly, making fuel management a critical business consideration. When finished vessels left his workshop, they entered an equally complex distribution network. Glassblowers sold goods directly or via merchants. Some were purchased in Alexandria's markets by local customers. Others were bought by merchants who would ship them throughout the Mediterranean. Prices varied by clarity, size, and decoration, allowing workshops to serve multiple market segments simultaneously. This interconnectedness meant that our glassblower was sensitive to events far beyond Alexandria. Fuel shortages could halt production entirely, while increased demand from a military campaign or changes in fashion among wealthy Romans could affect his business directly. Workshops competed aggressively for contracts, creating an environment of constant innovation and efficiency. Let's now step into the workshop itself. Glass-blowing workshops were typically located on the edges of the city for fire safety, but they weren't just workplaces. Workshops often doubled as family homes. This arrangement was practical, but meant that family life was constantly permeated by the heat, smoke, and danger of glassmaking. As you approached the artisan neighborhoods, you'd first notice the smoke rising from numerous chimneys and vents. The workshops belonged to artisan neighborhoods, where glass blowers, metal workers, potters, and other craftsmen created tight-knit communities. Then you'd hear the sounds, the roar of furnaces, the clang of tools, voices calling out instructions. The smell would hit you next. Burning wood and charcoal produced thick, acrid smoke. Mixed with this were other scents: the mineral smell of heated sand and natron, the sharp tang of certain colorants, and always the smell of human sweat in the intense heat. The heart of the workshop, the furnace. Dominating the workshop was the furnace, and here's something crucial to understand. Furnaces were kept running day and night for weeks or months at a time. This wasn't a choice but a necessity. Once lit, a glass-blowing furnace couldn't simply be turned off at the end of the workday. the furnace needed to maintain high temperatures continuously in what was called a campaign. Roman glass-blowing furnaces were complex structures, typically built from clay bricks and heavily insulated. A well-built furnace might be 6 feet tall or more and contain multiple chambers serving different purposes. Judge temperature by color alone, reading the flames and the appearance of molten glass to determine if conditions were optimal. Above the firing chamber sat the melting chamber, where crucibles containing the raw materials were placed. These crucibles held the batch of sand, natron, lime, and other materials that would be transformed into glass through hours of sustained heat. The melting chamber had openings called working holes, through which the glassblower could access the molten glass with his blowpipe. When not in use, they were closed with clay or metal covers to retain heat. Many furnaces also included an annealing chamber where finished vessels cooled slowly over several hours. This controlled cooling was essential because cracks often formed during cooling if rushed. Glass under thermal stress could shatter, ruining hours of work and wasting valuable materials. Some workshops also had separate smaller furnaces called glory holes, reheating chambers that allowed extended shaping. As we'll see, glass cools rapidly, and the glory hole was essential for the complex multi-stage work that created the finest vessels. The furnace campaign and its implications. The continuous operation of furnaces had profound implications for the workshop's rhythm. A glass blower's day revolved around furnace cycles rather than clock time. Someone always needed to tend the furnace, feeding it fuel and monitoring temperature. The glass in the crucibles needed to remain molten and ready for working. This meant workshops operated on long shifts with workers rotating responsibilities. Even during hours when glass wasn't being actively worked, someone needed to be present. Often, this task fell to apprentices who spent night shifts keeping the fires stoked while learning to read the subtle visual cues that indicated proper temperature. The decision to start a furnace campaign was significant. It required having enough raw materials and fuel on hand to justify weeks of continuous production. It required having orders or expected demand for the products that would be made. And it required the physical stamina of the workshop's workers, who knew that workdays could last 10 to 14 hours during peak production. Workshop tools and equipment. Beyond the furnace, the workshop was filled with tools that had to be maintained constantly. Blowpipes were cleaned constantly to prevent flaws. Any residue or imperfection on the pipe could mar the glass gather. Made from iron, these hollow tubes were typically 4 to 5 feet long, with one end slightly flared for gathering molten glass. Pontil rods were used to shape vessel bases and hold vessels during final finishing. These solid iron rods left characteristic marks, pontil scars, on the base of vessels, meeting hot glass in a busy workshop. However, these tools had limited life. They'd eventually char and need replacement. Metal tools had their own challenges. Metal tools left marks if glass cooled too much, creating visible imperfections. Shears for cutting, pincers for detail work, and various specialized tools all required careful handling and precise timing to use effectively. Marvers, flat surfaces of stone or metal, were used for shaping and smoothing glass. The technique required constant practice, as rotation speed affected vessel symmetry directly. Too fast or too slow, and the piece would become lopsided. The workspace environment. The physical environment of the workshop was harsh by any standard. Temperatures near the furnace could exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit even in winter. In Alexandria's hot summers, conditions were nearly unbearable. This heat dictated that clothing was minimal and practical due to extreme temperatures. Glassblowers typically wore simple linen tunics, often shortened or even discarded during the hottest work. Leather aprons helped protect against sparks and molten drips, which were constant hazards. These aprons, while adding to the heat burden, were essential safety equipment that could prevent serious burns. The floor was typically packed earth or clay, covered with ash and the detritus of production. Broken glass. Fragments were everywhere. They're one of the most common finds at archaeological sites. But these fragments weren't waste. Broken imported glass was especially valued for recycling, as imported pieces often had superior clarity or colors that local raw materials couldn't match. Mistakes were common during training and recycled immediately, making glass a somewhat forgiving material to learn with. Living above the furnace. Remember that workshops often doubled as family homes. Living quarters were typically attached or built above the workshop area. This proximity meant that family members experienced the workshop's heat, noise, and dangers constantly. Children helped with cleaning and preparation, learning the rhythms of the craft from their earliest years. Women sometimes assisted in sorting materials or sales, managing the business side, while the men worked at the furnace. The household was an economic unit where everyone contributed according to their abilities. This arrangement created tight bonds but also constant stress. The risk of fire, the ever-present heat, and the demands of continuous production affected everyone in the household, not just the glassblowers themselves. Before dawn. Preparation. Let's now follow a typical day in the life of our glassblower. We'll call him Marcus, though he might bear a Greek name like Demetrios or an Egyptian name like Horus. Alexandria was cosmopolitan, and the glass trade included people of all backgrounds. Marcus wakes in darkness. Glass blowers often began work before sunrise to take advantage of cooler morning air. The timing was crucial. Starting early meant working during the coolest part of the day before the Egyptian sun added its intensity to the furnace's heat. Even before dawn, the workshop is warm. The furnace has been burning through the night, tended by young Ptolemy, an apprentice whose turn it was to keep watch. The boy is barely 13, but he's been in the workshop since he was 7, and he knows his responsibility. Most glassblowers started training as children or teenagers, beginning with simple tasks and gradually taking on more complex responsibilities. Marcus begins with a simple breakfast, bread dipped in olive oil, perhaps some cheese. Meals were simple and eaten quickly during cooling periods or breaks in the work. He won't eat much now because working in intense heat with a full stomach is unpleasant and potentially dangerous. Water was constantly needed to prevent dehydration from furnace heat, so he drinks deeply, knowing he'll need to maintain hydration throughout the day. He moves to the workshop wearing his work tunic and leather apron. He checks the furnace temperature first. After decades at this craft, he can judge temperature by color alone. The flames have the right blue-white intensity. The glass in the crucibles glows with the correct orange hue. Ptolemy has done well. Marcus examines the glass more closely, checking that it's fully melted and free of bubbles. He reviews today's work. A merchant has ordered 36 bottles of a standard size, and a temple priest wants several small vessels for ritual use. There's also the ongoing production of basic bottles and cups that will be sold directly from the workshop. Morning. The work begins. Sunrise to midday. As the sun rises, the workshop comes fully to life. Marcus works with 2 assistants today, Demetrios a skilled journeyman in his 20s, and young Ptolemy, who after his night shift will rest, but also continue his training by watching the more experienced craftsmen. Let's watch as Marcus makes one of the ordered bottles, a standard form he's made thousands of times, yet each one requires focus and skill. He begins by checking his blowpipe. Blowpipes were cleaned constantly to prevent flaws. Any residue from previous work could mar the new gather. Satisfied, he positions himself by the working hole, and immediately the heat hits him full force. Even after all these years, the intensity of opening that working hole never becomes entirely comfortable. The gather comes out glowing, naturally tinted blue-green from iron in the sand, despite using the purest available. To get truly clear glass requires manganese to neutralize the color, and that's expensive, reserved for premium pieces. Marcus rolls the gather on the marver briefly, then raises the pipe to his lips. Here's where mastery of breath control was essential for shaping vessels. He doesn't blow hard but steadily, watching the bubble form and expand within the gather. His rotation continues without pause. Hand-eye coordination mattered more than physical strength in this craft. Demetrios, despite being younger and stronger, still can't quite match Marcus's precision after 5 years of practice. But glass cools rapidly. Already the glow is fading, the glass stiffening. Marcus moves to the glory hole, rotating the piece in the opening. The reheating chamber allows extended shaping. Without it, complex pieces would be nearly impossible. Reheated, the glass glows bright again. More blowing, more shaping. He uses a wet wooden block, and water hisses and steams where wood meets glass. The block helps create symmetry, but timing is everything. Too long and the block begins to char. Too brief and the shaping is incomplete. This cycle continues. Reheating, blowing, shaping. Each cycle adds refinement. The bottle takes form. Marcus knows exactly how thick the wall should be. Glass thickness varied intentionally for strength or elegance. A storage bottle needs thicker walls than a decorative cup. Too thin and it's fragile. Too thick and it's heavy and uses unnecessary material. Now for finishing. Demetrios brings a pontil rod, and together they transfer the bottle. The pontil attaches to the base with a small amount of fresh glass. Marcus scores where the bottle meets the blowpipe, and with a sharp tap, it breaks free cleanly. The rim needs finishing. Handles and rims were added as separate molten pieces when required, but this simple bottle just needs a smooth, slightly flared rim. Marcus reheats the opening, uses his tools to shape it. The entire process has taken perhaps 12 minutes from first gather to completed form. Demetrios takes the finished bottle with long-handled tools and places it in the annealing chamber. Finished vessels cooled slowly in annealing chambers. Rushing this would cause internal stresses and cracking. The bottle will rest there for several hours, cooling gradually to room temperature. Marcus immediately begins another bottle. The rhythm is established. Gather, blow, shape, reheat, finish, anneal, again and again. This is how efficiency is achieved, the practiced repetition of standardized forms. By midday, he'll have completed nearly 24 bottles. Midday, heat and endurance. Marcus continues working, but the pace slows slightly. He drinks frequently, water mixed with vinegar, or just water, anything to maintain hydration. Dehydration was a constant danger, and experienced glassblowers knew to drink regularly, even when not feeling thirsty. Young Ptolemy, after resting from his night shift, returns to help. He's at the stage where he's beginning to practice actual glasswork under close supervision. Marcus lets him attempt a simple gather. The boy's rotation is still uneven. He hasn't yet developed the muscle memory that makes it automatic. The gather wobbles, and Marcus gently corrects. Steady. Feel the rhythm, don't think about it. Ptolemy tries again. Better this time. The boy has talent, Marcus thinks. He'll make a proper glass blower if he stays with it. But some glass blowers never advance beyond assistant roles. Not everyone had the coordination, the breath control, or the heat tolerance the craft demanded. Skills were often passed from parent to child, but aptitude varied. Marcus's own eldest son had tried for 2 years before admitting he couldn't master the breath control and had gone to work with his uncle, a potter. No shame in that. Better to find the right craft than persist miserably in the wrong one. The work continues, bottle after bottle. The repetitive rhythm is broken only by the sounds of the workshop, the roar of the furnace, the hiss of wet wood on hot glass, the occasional sharp crack when a piece develops a flaw and must be discarded for remelting. A brief meal around midday, bread, olives, some salted fish, more water. The food is eaten quickly, conversations brief. Meals were simple and eaten quickly during cooling periods. There's always more work waiting. Afternoon, specialized work and challenges. In the afternoon, Marcus turns to the temple commission. 6 small ritual vessels requiring more care than the standard bottles. These need to be more refined, with clearer glass and smoother forms. He uses glass that has more manganese added to neutralize the natural color tint. The glass is more expensive and slightly more difficult to work. It stiffens more quickly than the natural blue-green glass. But the result is worth it. Vessels that are nearly colorless, with just the faintest hint of aqua. This specialized work requires higher concentration. Every movement must be precise. The breath control must be exact. Too much pressure, and the walls become too thin. Too little, and the form doesn't develop properly. The rotation must be perfectly steady, or asymmetry will ruin the piece. Marcus works more slowly now, taking time to get each vessel right. Demetrios assists, handling the pontil work and managing the reheating. They work together in near silence, a practiced team where words are often unnecessary. Evening, winding down. As evening approaches and the sun begins to set, the rhythm changes. The intense heat begins to ease slightly, though the workshop remains far warmer than outside air. Marcus completes a final few standard bottles, then signals Demetrios to begin the evening routine. The furnace must be checked, fuel added to maintain the fire through the night. The day's production, dozens of bottles and the temple vessels, must be inventoried. Some pieces in the annealing chamber from earlier in the day are now cool enough to move to storage. The evening meal is more substantial. Marcus's wife, Apollonia, has prepared lentil stew, bread, and vegetables. Women sometimes assisted in sorting materials or sales, but Apollonia's main contribution is managing the household. No small task, when that household includes 3 children, Marcus's elderly mother, and the constant chaos of the workshop. The family eats together in the small courtyard attached to the workshop, taking advantage of the cooler evening air. Children helped with cleaning and preparation around the workshop. And tonight, Marcus's younger son will take the night watch, keeping the furnace fed while the household sleeps. After eating, there's lighter work, sorting through the day's production, checking annealed pieces for hidden flaws, organizing materials for tomorrow. Marcus examines each piece carefully. A small bubble in one bottle, acceptable for common use. a slight wobble in another, still functional, but not his best work. The temple vessels are excellent though. The priest will be pleased. As darkness falls, oil lamps are lit. Young Marcus, named for his father, takes his position by the furnace for the night watch. He's 15 now and responsible. This is part of his training too, learning to read the furnace, to judge when more fuel is needed, to maintain temperature through the long night hours. Most glassblowers started training as children or teenagers, and this night watch was a crucial stage in that apprenticeship. The senior, Marcus, retires to the family quarters, exhausted from another long day. Tomorrow, the rhythm will repeat. It always does during a furnace campaign. Perhaps another week of production before they let the furnace cool and take a few days rest. Religious festivals were often the only true days off, giving workers rare respite from the continuous demands of the burning furnace. Beginning as an apprentice, let's now explore in depth the path by which someone became a glassblower. Most glassblowers started training as children or teenagers, typically beginning around age 7 to 10. Skills were often passed from parent to child. Craft knowledge, running in families, was the most common pattern. But not every glassblower had sons. Exchange for training, the apprentice worked in the shop, providing valuable labor that helped offset the cost and risk of teaching them. The first years, observation and basic tasks. The earliest years of apprenticeship involved only the most basic tasks, but these were more important than they might seem. Apprentices learned by watching before touching tools. This was absolutely fundamental to the training philosophy. A young apprentice might spend months simply keeping the workshop clean, sweeping up glass fragments carefully, because broken imported glass was especially valued for recycling, and organizing tools. This wasn't busy work. It taught the apprentice to move safely and efficiently in a dangerous environment, to understand the layout and rhythm of the workshop, and to begin recognizing different types of glass, tools, and materials by sight and touch. Apprentices also learned the materials. They'd help sort color by color and clarity, learning that impurities caused unwanted green or brown tints. They'd prepare raw materials, understanding the proportions needed. They'd learn that sand quality directly affected glass clarity, and that natron sources were tightly controlled commodities. This foundational knowledge was essential before ever touching the blowpipe. The progression of skills. As an apprentice demonstrated reliability and maturity, more complex tasks were assigned. Tending the furnace during night shifts was a major responsibility. The apprentice learned to judge temperature by color alone, reading the flames and the appearance of molten glass to determine if more fuel was needed. This skill was harder than it sounds. Experienced glassblowers could judge temperature by color alone, but it took years of observation to develop this sensitivity. Eventually, apprentices began attempting actual glasswork with practice glass, imperfect batches or glass being recycled anyway. Early attempts were uniformly terrible. The gather would fall off the pipe. The rotation would be uneven. The breath control would be wrong. But mistakes were common during training and recycled immediately, so the material wasn't wasted even if the time was. The critical skills that took years to master. Several skills were absolutely fundamental and required thousands of hours of practice. Breath control was paramount. Mastery of breath control was essential for shaping vessels, requiring steady, even pressure over an extended breath. Too weak, and the glass didn't expand properly. Too strong, and the vessel's walls became too thin, or the shape distorted. Since glass cooled continuously, there was no time to take multiple breaths and build up the form gradually. Each inflation needed to be decisive and controlled. Rotation technique was equally critical. The blowpipe must rotate continuously and evenly. This kept the temperature. Judgment was perhaps the most subtle skill. Experienced glass blowers could judge temperature by color alone, but learning this took years. Glass is workable only within a specific temperature range. Too hot, and it's runny and uncontrollable. Too cool, and it becomes stiff and may crack under stress. Without thermometers, the glass blower had to judge by sight the color and behavior of the glass, by sound, how it responded to tools, and by feel, the resistance to deformation. Hand-eye coordination mattered more than physical strength. A glass blower needed to coordinate rotation, breath, tool positioning, and movement simultaneously while working rapidly before the glass cooled. Some people simply couldn't develop this coordination, no matter how much they practiced. Tool mastery required understanding how each tool affected glass at different temperatures. Wooden tools were soaked in water to avoid burning, but timing was crucial. Metal tools left marks if glass cooled too much, creating visible flaws. Knowing exactly when to apply which tool was knowledge built through experience. The reality of advancement. Not every apprentice advanced to become a master glassblower. Some glassblowers never advanced beyond assistant roles, valuable workshop members, but not capable of the finest or most complex work. This wasn't necessarily a failure. Skilled assistants were essential, and steady work as an assistant was better than struggling unsuccessfully to master what one simply couldn't do. Others specialized in particular aspects of the craft. Some became expert at producing standard bottles efficiently, but couldn't create complex decorated pieces. Some mastered mold-blown work but struggled with free-blown vessels. Some developed expertise in specific colors or forms. The most talented apprentices eventually completed their training and faced a choice: continue working for wages as a journeyman, or attempt to establish their own workshop. The latter required substantial capital, furnace construction, tools, initial materials, fuel stores, and a workspace. Many talented glass blowers remained employees throughout their careers simply because they couldn't accumulate the resources to start independently. Reputation recognition. Exceptional artisans gained reputations across cities. A glassblower known for particularly fine work might receive commissions from distant clients. Teaching apprentices increased a workshop status, as it showed the master was skilled enough to pass on knowledge and had achieved sufficient success to take on the burden of training others. Skills were often passed from parent to child, creating dynasties of glassblowers where techniques and trade secrets remained within families for generations. A workshop with a reputation for quality might see that reputation inherited by sons and grandsons, each generation building on the knowledge and connections of the previous one. The apprenticeship system was how innovation spread through the craft. When a glass blower discovered a more efficient technique or a new decorative effect, this knowledge passed to apprentices. Some of these apprentices eventually carried the knowledge to other workshops, either as journeymen working elsewhere or as independent masters starting their own businesses. However, certain trade secrets were closely guarded. A workshop that had perfected a particularly sought-after color or developed a unique technique might try to keep it within the family, teaching it only to sons or trusted apprentices bound by loyalty or even oaths of secrecy. The balance between knowledge sharing and secrecy was constant in craft communities. The basic recipe and material science. Understanding what glass actually is helps us appreciate the glassblower's craft. Glass is an amorphous solid, its molecules arranged in a disordered pattern like a liquid, but behaving like a solid. The basic recipe required 3 key components, and the quality of each directly affected the final product. Silica was the main ingredient, typically comprising about 70% of the mixture. Silica, in the form of sand, provides the basic glass-forming material. But here's the critical point. Sand quality directly affected glass clarity. Pure silica melts at around 3,100 degrees Fahrenheit, far beyond what ancient furnaces could achieve. Even minor impurities in the sand would affect the glass. Impurities caused unwanted green or brown tints that couldn't be removed once the glass was made. This made sourcing the right sand absolutely crucial. Egyptian glassmakers had the advantage of excellent desert sand deposits, but they still had to be selective. They learned through generations which locations provided the purest sand and which contained too much iron or other minerals that would discolor the glass. Soda dramatically lowered the melting point of silica, bringing it down to temperatures around 1800 to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit that ancient furnaces could reach. In Roman Egypt, soda came from natron, and this is where Alexandria had a massive advantage. Natron sources were tightly controlled commodities. Egypt's near monopoly on high-quality natron gave Egyptian glassmakers both better materials and economic leverage. The Wadi Natron supplied natron not just to local workshops, but for export throughout the Mediterranean. Lime, usually added as crushed limestone or shells, stabilized the glass. Without adequate lime, glass would gradually degrade in humid air, developing a cloudy, diseased surface. The right proportion of lime made glass durable enough to last centuries, or even millennia, as surviving Roman glass proves. The palette of colors. But glassblowers learned to manipulate color deliberately through carefully controlled additives. Cobalt was used for deep blue glass. Even tiny amounts, less than 1% by weight, could produce intense, saturated blue. Cobalt was imported from sources in the eastern deserts and was expensive, making deep blue glass more costly than natural aqua glass. The intensity achievable with cobalt made it highly prized for luxury items and objects with religious or protective significance. Copper created turquoise and green shades, but the exact color depended on furnace conditions. In an oxidizing atmosphere, plenty of air in the furnace, copper produced the blue-green to turquoise colors common in Roman glass. In a reducing atmosphere, limited air, copper could create red glass, the famous copper ruby that was especially prized and difficult to control consistently. Manganese helped neutralize color, counteracting the blue-green tint of iron impurities. In small, carefully controlled amounts, manganese could produce glass that was nearly colorless, what Romans called crystal glass, because it resembled expensive rock crystal. This clear glass was technically challenging to produce and commanded premium prices. In larger amounts, manganese created purple hues. Iron, beyond unavoidable traces in sand, could be deliberately increased to produce colors ranging from pale green to amber to dark brown, depending on the amount and furnace conditions. The economics of materials. The cost structure of materials directly affected what glass blowers could produce profitably. Basic bottles using natural blue-green glass from recycled cullet were the most economical to produce. Broken imported glass was especially valued for recycling because imported pieces often had superior clarity or colors that local raw materials alone couldn't match. A workshop could build a profitable business on mass production of these basic forms. Mid-range products using standard colorants or moderate amounts of decolorizer could serve the comfortable middle class. These balance cost and quality, offering attractive vessels at reasonable prices. Luxury items using expensive colorants like cobalt or requiring large amounts of manganese for colorless glass served wealthy clients. These pieces might cost as much as silver vessels and were status symbols as much as functional objects. The continuous demand for materials created constant challenges. Fuel shortages could halt production entirely. Workshops stockpiled wood and charcoal, but supplies were always uncertain. Wood was transported from afar for furnaces because local deforestation meant Alexandria's region couldn't supply enough fuel for its industries. Rising fuel costs affected vessel prices directly, sometimes forcing workshops to raise prices or reduce production. Successful glass blowers had to be not just craftsmen, but also skilled at managing supplies, maintaining relationships with material suppliers, and adapting to supply fluctuations. Beyond solid colors, glass blowers created various special effects that required advanced skill. Marbled glass combined different colored glasses incompletably, creating swirled patterns. This required gathering multiple colors on the pipe simultaneously and working them together just enough to create patterns without complete mixing. Millefiori, thousand flowers. Glass incorporated pre-made colored canes arranged in patterns. Creating these canes was specialized work, and incorporating them into blown vessels required precise temperature control. Gold band glass involved applying thin sheets of gold leaf between layers of glass, an expensive technique that created vessels glittering with golden patterns. Applied decoration involved handles and rims added as separate molten pieces. Trails of colored glass could be applied and then combed or manipulated to create patterns. All of this required perfect timing and temperature judgment. Achieving truly colorless glass was a significant technical achievement that required both very pure sand and the addition of precise amounts of manganese to neutralize remaining iron tints. Experienced glass blowers could judge temperature by color alone, but working with colorless glass was particularly challenging because temperature changes were harder to read without color cues. Colorless glass commanded premium prices among wealthy Romans who prized its resemblance to rock crystal. The difficulty of producing it consistently meant successful glass blowers who mastered the technique could charge prices approaching those of precious metal vessels. Alexandrian glass blowers produced an extraordinary variety of objects to serve multiple market segments. The genius of the glass industry was that it could serve everyone from day laborers to aristocrats. Drinking vessels, cups, beakers, and bowls for wine and water were regular productions. Roman custom required mixing wine with water, so most households needed vessels for both purposes. These range from simple functional forms, selling for modest prices, to elaborate vessels with handles and decoration for wealthier buyers. The economic brilliance of glassblowing was its flexibility in serving different markets. Prices varied by clarity, size, and decoration, allowing a single workshop to produce goods across the price spectrum. Low-end market. Simple bottles and basic cups made from recycled glass in natural colors. These were the bread and butter products, made in large quantities, sold cheaply, and affordable to common people. A basic bottle might cost a few arses, small copper coins, within reach of laborers and craftsmen. Middle market. Better formed vessels with some decoration, made from better quality glass. Drinking cups with applied handles, bottles with more refined shapes, serving vessels for comfortable households. These might cost several sesterces, brass coins. affordable to shopkeepers, successful artisans, and junior officials. Upper market, decorated vessels using colored or colorless glass with applied decoration or mold-blown patterns. These served wealthy households and might cost several denarii, silver coins. Luxury glass could rival silver in cost. A truly exceptional piece using rare colors or complex techniques might cost as much as gold jewelry. This pricing structure meant workshops could maintain steady income from mass production while pursuing occasional high-profit luxury commissions. Beyond everyday tableware, certain specialized forms served specific markets. Perfume and cosmetic vessels. The Roman world's love of scented oils and cosmetics created steady demand. Small unguentaria in various colors serve both functional and decorative purposes. Glass vessels used in burial. Rites created seasonal demand. Certain times of year when burial customs dictated more elaborate provisions saw increased orders. Funerary goods increased demand seasonally, providing workshops with predictable busy periods. Medical and pharmaceutical vessels. Doctors and pharmacists needed specific forms, vessels with narrow necks for precise dispensing, wide-mouthed containers for mixing compounds, distinctive shapes that patients recognized. Lighting devices. While ceramic lamps were more common, glass versions existed for those who could afford them, along with lamp covers that protected flames from wind. How did Alexandrian glass reach its markets? Multiple channels existed. Direct sales. Glass blowers sold goods directly from their workshops to local customers. A household servant might come to purchase bottles or tableware directly, allowing the glass blower to capture full retail value. Local merchants. Merchants bought in bulk and resold through shops in city markets. These middlemen had established relationships and could move larger quantities, though they took a cut of the profit. Long-distance trade. Traders purchased significant quantities for export. Glass blowers sold goods directly or via merchants depending on their size and connections. Alexandria's harbour was constantly busy with ships heading throughout the Mediterranean. Glass vessels, being relatively light and stackable when properly packed, were ideal trade goods. Commission work. Wealthy clients or institutions like temples might commission specific pieces directly from workshops with appropriate reputations. These direct relationships with elite clients were prestigious and profitable. Workshops competed aggressively for contracts. Competition existed on multiple dimensions. Price. Efficient workshops producing standard items could compete on price, maintaining thin margins but high volume. Quality. Workshops known for consistent quality could charge premium prices. Reputation took years to build, but could justify higher prices and attract better clients. Specialization. Some workshops specialized in particular products, perhaps becoming known for especially fine perfume bottles, or for a particular color, or for efficient production of standardized bottles for the wine trade. Innovation. Workshops that developed new decorative techniques or forms could temporarily command premium prices until competitors copied the innovation. Exceptional artisans gained reputations across cities. A glass blower renowned for particular skills might receive commissions from distant locations, bringing prestige and profit to his workshop. Economic activity was regulated and taxed. Taxes were levied on production and trade, reducing profit margins and creating administrative burdens. Workshop owners had to maintain records, pay various fees, and navigate bureaucratic requirements. These costs were passed on to consumers, affecting final prices. Alexandrian glass was a major export, bringing wealth into the city and Egypt. However, competition from other centers, particularly Syria, was intense. Syrian glass blowers were renowned throughout the empire and had pioneered many innovations. This competition drove efficiency and innovation in Alexandrian workshops. They couldn't rely on local monopoly, but had to compete on quality and price throughout the Mediterranean market. The result was a dynamic, competitive industry that served markets from Britain to the Danube frontier, from Spain to the eastern provinces. Alexandrian glass became genuinely global in its reach, and glassblowers were key participants in the Roman economy's interconnected trade networks. To understand the glassblowers' social position, we must understand Roman society's rigid hierarchy. At the top were the senatorial and equestrian orders, the highest aristocracy. Below them came wealthy local elites, then ordinary freeborn citizens, divided into various ranks. Below citizens were freed slaves, freedmen. At the bottom were slaves. Craftsmen, like glassblowers, generally fell into the category of ordinary citizens, sometimes freedmen. They were clearly above slaves, but well below the elite classes. This meant they had legal rights and some social standing, but limited political power and access to elite circles. Within the artisan community, however, distinctions existed. A successful workshop owner who employed multiple workers commanded more respect than a wage employee. A master who trained apprentices had higher status than one who didn't. Exceptional artisans gained reputations across cities, bringing prestige beyond mere economic success. While glassblowers weren't elite, successful ones could achieve comfortable economic status. A workshop owner who managed his business well might accumulate property. The workshop itself, perhaps rental property, savings, and valuable business connections. The variation was substantial. Workshop owners, those employing others and selling successfully, might achieve what we'd consider middle-class status, comfortable, not wealthy, but secure with prospects for their children. Independent craftsmen, working alone or with just apprentices, these had modest but adequate income. Failed craftsmen, those who couldn't compete or maintain workshops, might fall into poverty, perhaps working as day laborers or depending on charity. Remember that workshops often doubled as family homes. This arrangement created unique dynamics. The master glass blower was household head in both domestic and economic terms. His authority extended over family members and workshop employees alike. Women sometimes assisted in sorting materials or sales, handling the business side. While rarely working at the furnace due to the heat and heavy labor, wives managed households, raised children, and contributed to the business's administrative and commercial aspects. Children helped with cleaning and preparation, learning the craft from earliest memory. Sons might be expected to learn glassblowing, while daughters might marry into other artisan families, creating networks between workshops. Extended family often shared the household. A widowed mother or elderly father might contribute what they could while being supported by the working generation. Older glass blowers often supervised rather than blew glass, transitioning from physical labor to teaching and management as their bodies aged. Glass blowers belonged to artisan neighborhoods where craftsmen of various types lived and worked in close proximity. These neighborhoods formed tight communities. Mutual support. Workshops helped each other during emergencies, sharing tools, assisting with difficult orders, fighting fires that threatened the entire neighborhood. Collegia, trade associations, brought craftsmen together for mutual benefit. These weren't unions but social and religious organizations providing burial insurance, organizing of festivals, and sometimes negotiating collectively with authorities. Teaching apprentices increased the workshop's status within these associations, demonstrating success and commitment to the craft's future. Competition. Despite cooperation, workshops also competed. They vied for the same customers and contracts, competed on price and quality, and sometimes jealously guarded technical advantages. Cross-craft networks. Glassblowers interacted with other trades, fuel suppliers, merchants, potters, metal workers. These relationships were essential for business success. It kept workshops and skills within extended family networks, maintained appropriate social boundaries, and created business alliances. A glassblower's daughter might marry another glassblower, a metal worker, or another craftsman from a similar social position. Her dowry might include property or cash that helped establish the new household. Sons who didn't follow their father's trade might marry into families practicing other crafts. These marriage networks created multi-generational webs, connecting artisan families across trades and neighborhoods, social identity and pride. Despite not being elite, craftsmen took pride in their skills. Tombstones sometimes emphasized profession, suggesting that being a skilled craftsman was part of one's identity worth recording for eternity. The ability to transform raw materials into useful, beautiful objects through knowledge and skill was genuinely valued. The independence of owning one's own workshop, being one's own master, meant something in a society where many were slaves or dependent clients. Glassblowers knew their products were used throughout the Mediterranean, perhaps by wealthy and powerful people. This provided significance even without personal elite status. Their craft mattered to the world beyond their workshop, the immediate dangers. Glassblowing was among the most dangerous crafts in the ancient world. The hazards were numerous and constant. Burns were the most obvious and common injury. Molten glass at 2000 degrees Fahrenheit caused severe burns on contact. Despite leather aprons that helped protect against sparks and molten drips, accidents happened regularly. A splatter of molten glass, a moment of clumsiness, contact with a hot tool, all could cause painful burns that might become infected in an era before antibiotics. Heat exposure was relentless. Working in temperatures exceeding 110 degrees Fahrenheit, while standing near furnaces created constant risk of heat exhaustion and collapse. Despite clothing being minimal and practical due to extreme temperatures, workers still suffered. Flying glass was hazardous. Glass under thermal stress could crack explosively, sending sharp fragments flying. Cracks often formed during cooling if rushed, and these unexpected fractures could cause cuts or eye, injuries, falls risked disaster in workshops cluttered with tools and uneven floors. A fall while holding a blowpipe with molten glass attached could have catastrophic consequences. Chronic health conditions. Beyond acute injuries, the craft created cumulative health problems. Long-term exposure damaged lungs and eyesight. These were nearly universal consequences of a career in glassblowing. Eye damage. The constant exposure to intense heat and brilliant light took inevitable toll. Many glassblowers developed progressively diminished vision, what we might recognize as cataracts, thermal damage to the cornea, or other conditions gradually reduced sight. Some became partially blind by middle age. This was expected. The craft simply destroyed eyesight over time. Respiratory problems. Long-term exposure damaged lungs from years of breathing smoke and fumes. Workshops had inadequate ventilation, meaning constant exposure to wood smoke, charcoal fumes, and vapors from various materials. This chronic exposure led to what we'd recognize as occupational asthma, chronic bronchitis, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Coughing, shortness of breath, and reduced lung capacity were common among older glass blowers. Musculoskeletal deterioration. Arthritis was common from repetitive motion. The constant rotation of the blowpipe stressed wrists, forearms, and shoulders. Maintaining working positions near the furnace strained backs and legs. Over decades, these stresses manifested as chronic pain, reduced mobility, and disability. Cardiovascular stress. Working in extreme temperatures year after year stressed the cardiovascular system. Heat exhaustion and related prob. Medical care limitations, injuries, were treated with household remedies rather than doctors. Professional medical care was expensive and often no more effective than home treatment. Burns might be treated with various poultices, olive oil, honey, vinegar, with varying effectiveness. Without understanding of infection or antisepsis, serious burns often became infected and potentially fatal. Eye problems had essentially no effective treatment. Respiratory diseases were poorly understood. Pain from musculoskeletal problems was managed with herbal remedies. Opium for severe pain, willow bark for moderate pain, various other herbs. But chronic pain was mostly just endured. Adaptation and survival strategies. Glass blowers developed strategies to manage risks and extend working life. Experience taught caution. Older craftsmen who survived injuries became more careful, having learned consequences the hard way. This hard-won knowledge was passed to apprentices, not just how to shape glass, but how to avoid injury. Artisans became merchants, selling glass rather than making it, using their knowledge of the craft to advantage in commercial dealings. Family support. Others passed workshops to sons or apprentices, continuing to provide advice and supervision, but no longer doing the physical work themselves. The grim reality. The reality was stark. Glass blowing shortened lives and diminished quality of life. While we lack specific mortality data for glass blowers versus the general population, the hazards suggest reduced life expectancy and increased disability. However, glass blowers had some advantages over the poorest urban workers. They earned more than day laborers, meaning better nutrition and housing. They had valuable skills that remained useful even as physical capacity declined. Knowledge could be sold through teaching and advice even when hands and lungs could no longer work the furnace. They existed within supportive community networks through family and collegia. The harsh truth was that glass blowing extracted a physical price that couldn't be avoided, only managed. Every glass blower knew this entering the craft, and every master saw it in the declining health of his elders. Yet the craft continued, generation after generation, because it provided livelihood, identity, and meaning despite its costs. Religious syncretism in daily life. Alexandria was extraordinarily diverse religiously. Egyptian, Greek, and Roman beliefs blended in daily life, creating a unique spiritual landscape where ancient traditions mixed with newer practices. Our glassblower participated in this blended religious world. Many glassblowers prayed to household gods for safety, maintaining small shrines within their workshop homes. The specific gods honored might reflect the family's background, Egyptian deities like Ptah, patron of craftsmen, or Greek gods like Hephaestus, god of the forge, or Roman household spirits, Lares and Penates. Given the dangers of fire and burns, protective deities were especially important. Before starting a furnace campaign, special prayers or offerings might be made. Some dedicated small glass offerings at temples, simple. Vessels or decorative objects offered to gods in thanks for protection or success, or in hope of future favor. Daily religious practice, religious observance was woven into daily routine. Morning prayers at the household shrine might ask for, or patterns might be interpreted as signs. A furnace that lit easily was a good omen. One that resisted lighting might cause anxiety. Accidents were sometimes blamed on divine displeasure. If someone suffered a serious burn, or if a valuable piece shattered unexpectedly, people might wonder what the gods were displeased about. Conversely, success was seen as a sign of favor from the gods. When work went well, when difficult pieces succeeded, when the furnace behaved perfectly, these were signs of divine approval. Glass in religious and magical practice. Glass itself had religious significance. Amulets made of glass were common, believed to offer protection against evil. Certain colors were associated with protection or luck. Blue glass, especially deep cobalt blue, was particularly associated with protection against the evil eye. Small glass eye beads were worn or displayed to ward off malevolent gazes that might cause misfortune. Green glass might be associated with fertility and growth. Red glass, difficult to produce, was especially valued. In magical contexts, clear glass might be associated with purity or truth. Glass vessels were used in burial rites throughout the Roman world. Perfume bottles, drinking cups, and other vessels were placed in tombs as offerings or provisions for the afterlife. This practice meant funerary goods. Increased demand seasonally. Certain times of year saw heightened production of vessels specifically for burial use. The production of funerary vessels might involve specific practices or prayers. Some workshops might specialize in such items, understanding the ritual requirements and appropriate forms. Festivals and community worship, religious festivals, were often the only true days off from work. These festivals served multiple functions, honoring the gods certainly, but also providing rest, community gathering, and celebration. Some festivals were specific to craftsmen's collegia. These trade associations often had patron deities and held annual festivals honoring them. These occasions strengthened bonds within the craft community, reinforced shared identity, and provided rare opportunities for leisure. During major civic festivals, workshops would close, or at least reduce work, and craftsmen would participate. In processions, sacrifices, and celebrations, these were genuine holidays in a life otherwise dominated by work. Philosophical perspectives. Beyond formal religion, various philosophical perspectives influenced how people understood their work and place in the world. Stoic ideas about virtue, acceptance of fate, and the dignity of labor were widespread. A Stoic-influenced glassblower might see his craft as a form of excellence to pursue for its own sake, take pride in mastering his art, and accept hardships as part of life's natural order. Traditional Egyptian views about the afterlife, order, ma'at, and the proper conduct of life remained influential among the native Egyptian population. These philosophical and religious ideas weren't abstract theories, but practical frameworks for making sense of daily experience. Why does suffering exist? What makes life meaningful? How should one conduct oneself? Death, burial, and afterlife. Proper burial was extremely important in ancient cultures. Membership in collegia often included burial. Benefits. The association would contribute to funeral costs and ensure proper burial for members who died. This was crucial for avoiding the disgrace of a pauper's burial in a common pit. Tombs and epitaphs sometimes mention profession. An epitaph might read, "Here lies Marcus, glassblower of Alexandria, who lived 45 years and worked with fire and breath. His vessels reached distant lands. May the earth rest lightly upon him. Such inscriptions suggest that being a skilled craftsman was part of one's identity worth recording for eternity. The craft mattered beyond mere economics. It was who you were. Beliefs about the afterlife varied. Traditional Egyptian concepts of judgment and paradise remained influential. Greek and Roman views ranged from shadowy underworlds to Elysian fields to philosophical skepticism. Emerging Christian beliefs about resurrection and eternal life were beginning to spread. Our glassblower might hold any of these views or some combination of them. Beyond economic necessity, did the work have meaning? Almost certainly yes. The transformation of materials, earth and minerals becoming something new through fire, echoed deep human fascinations with transformation and creation. There was something almost magical about it, even when you understood the process technically. The spread of one's work across the known world provided significance. Vessels traveling to distant lands, being used by people never met, becoming part of lives and stories far beyond Alexandria. This connected the teaching relationship between master and apprentice created continuity and legacy. A glassblower was part of a tradition extending into the past and continuing into the future. His knowledge would outlive him through his students. The creation of beauty, even in utilitarian objects, was meaningful. A well-made bottle had grace. A decorated cup was genuinely beautiful. This aesthetic dimension elevated the work beyond mere production. Individual workshop abandonment. Not every glass-blowing workshop thrived until its owner's peaceful retirement. Many failed or were abandoned. Economic failure. Workshops competed aggressively for contracts. Those that couldn't compete on price or quality eventually failed. Without sufficient income, the workshop would close, with tools sold, the furnace dismantled, and the space repurposed. Fire disasters. Despite precautions, fires happened. A workshop fire could destroy everything: furnace, tools, fuel stores, finished inventory, even the building itself. Without resources to rebuild, this meant permanent closure. Death without succession. When a master died without a son or trained successor capable of continuing, the workshop might simply close. Not all sons wanted to follow their father's trade. Not all were capable. If no buyer could be found, the business ended. These closures left characteristic archaeological signatures. Failed workshops left behind slag and broken glass. Heaps, the detritus of production that helps modern archaeologists identify ancient glassworking sites. Some workshops were deliberately dismantled, with usable materials salvaged. Others were abandoned more suddenly, leaving furnaces, tools, and production debris in place. What archaeology reveals. Archaeologists identify workshops by furnace remains. The heat-affected clay and brick characteristic, structure, and slag deposits are unmistakable. Even partially destroyed furnaces leave enough evidence to reconstruct their design and understand how they functioned. Glass debris is abundant at workshop sites: broken vessels, discarded cullet, glass that dripped or spilled. During work, this debris tells us what was being produced, what colors were used, what techniques were employed. Tool finds, especially metal tools that resist corrosion, reveal working methods. Blowpipes, pontil rods, shears, and other metal implements occasionally survive. Wooden tools rarely survive, but their existence is documented through other evidence. Raw materials and crucible fragments provide information about compositions and sources. Analysis of residues in crucibles reveals what was being made and where materials came from. The spatial layout of workshops can be reconstructed, showing where furnaces were placed, where storage areas existed, how work areas were organized. The fact that workshops often doubled as family homes is evident from the mixture of industrial and domestic artifacts found together. The archaeological evidence of daily life. Children's artifacts, toys, small vessels, beads, suggest families with children inhabited these spaces. The association with other craft workshops in artisan neighborhoods is evident from the clustering of different types of production sites in the same districts. The distribution patterns of Alexandrian glass, distinctive styles found at sites throughout the Mediterranean, confirms the extensive trade networks ancient sources describe. Technical details preserved in glass. Analysis of surviving ancient glass vessels reveals technical information. Tool marks on bases and rims show the sequence of forming and finishing. Pontil scars reveal how vessels were held during final stages. Archaeologists can often identify specific techniques from these marks. Trapped bubbles, flow lines, and other features provide information about working temperatures and techniques. The size and distribution of bubbles, for instance, indicates how thoroughly the glass was melted and how it was worked. Decorative elements, applied trails, mold-blown patterns cutting, demonstrate the range of skills ancient glass blowers possessed and how techniques evolved over time. Chemical analysis reveals compositions, allowing identification of raw material sources and trade patterns. Scientists can often determine where glass was made based on trace element signatures. Remarkably, analysis shows Roman glassmakers achieved consistent compositions, suggesting standardized recipes and quality control. These weren't random experimental batches, but carefully controlled production. The transmission of techniques. Alexandrian styles influenced glass across the Roman Empire, and the techniques survived long after the empire's fall. Byzantine glassmakers continued and refined Roman methods when the Western Roman Empire collapsed in. The 5th century CE, the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire maintained Alexandria and other glass centers. Techniques survived into Byzantine glassmaking, where they continued evolving. Islamic glassmakers, when Muslim armies conquered Egypt and the Levant in the 7th century CE, inherited these traditions. Medieval Islamic glass production was directly descended from Roman techniques, with new innovations added. Some of the finest medieval glass came from workshops using methods that trace directly back to Roman times. European glassmaking, particularly in Venice, was heavily influenced by Eastern traditions ultimately derived from Roman practices. Venetian glassmakers' dominance of medieval European production rested partly on craftsmen. The basic physics and chemistry haven't changed. Modern glassblowers still use methods pioneered by these artisans, gathering molten glass on hollow pipes, inflating it with breath, shaping through rotation and tools. This continuity across 2,000 years is remarkable. How many technologies remain essentially identical across such time spans? The genius of glassblowing's fundamental method was so complete that it hasn't required fundamental reinvention. The iridescent beauty of ancient glass. One striking feature of ancient glass in museums is the iridescent surface, shimmering rainbow colors that seem to glow from within. This beauty is accidental, the result of centuries of burial. When glass is buried in soil, or submerged in water for centuries, minerals and moisture gradually attack its surface. Thin layers separate, creating films that interfere with light like oil on water or soap bubbles, producing iridescence: silver, gold, purple, blue. Ironically, degradation has made ancient glass extraordinarily beautiful. Objects meant to be utilitarian have become precious, glowing with otherworldly colors their makers never imagined. Time has transformed them as fundamentally as fire once transformed sand into glass. This iridescence also tells archaeologists about burial conditions. Heavily iridescent glass typically came from damp environments. Glass from dry contexts, like Egypt's deserts, often survives with clearer surfaces, appearing closer to how it looked when new, still blue-green or whatever color it was made, without the rainbow shimmer. Imagining individual lives. Let's return to the human level and imagine specific moments that capture the experience of being a glassblower. A young apprentice's first gather. Picture a boy of perhaps 11 years. He started training as a child and has been in the workshop for 3 years now. He swept floors, tended the furnace during night shifts, sorted cullet, organized tools. Apprentices learned by watching before touching tools, and he's watched thousands of gathers, perhaps 10,000 or more. Today, his master, his father, quietly hands him a blowpipe. The pipe is heavier than he expected, awkward in. Remember everything he's seen. The glass adheres, but the gather is uneven, more on one side. His father doesn't criticize. Keep rotating. The glass will center itself if you keep moving. The boy continues rotating, arms already tired. The glass begins to even out. This small success fills him with pride. He knows he'll make many mistakes today. Mistakes are common during training and will be recycled immediately, but he's taking his first real steps toward mastery. A master completing a prestigious commission. Imagine Marcus in his 40s working on a special commission. A wealthy merchant has ordered 6 vessels for a feast, decorated cups in colorless glass, an expensive, prestigious order. He's working on the last cup. The clear glass is challenging. It cools quickly and shows every imperfection. Manganese has been added to neutralize color, making the glass more temperamental. He's been at this cup for nearly an hour. The main form is complete. Now for decoration. Handles added as separate molten pieces. He gathers a small amount of clear glass, applies it precisely where the handle will attach. Temperature must be perfect. Both glasses at exactly the right temperature for fusion. Too cool and they won't bond properly. Too hot and the forms distort. He shapes the handle carefully, checking symmetry constantly. Rotation speed affects vessel symmetry, and a handle throws off the balance. Years of experience guide his hands through subtle adjustments. A final reheating smooths everything, fusing decoration permanently. He examines his work with a critical eye developed over decades. The pattern is even, the glass clear, the form balanced. This cup matches the others perfectly. This commission will provide as much income as a week of making ordinary bottles. But beyond money, there's satisfaction in creating something genuinely beautiful. Something that will grace a wealthy table perhaps for decades. Exceptional artisans gained reputations across cities through work like this. An elderly craftsman teaching. Picture an elderly glassblower, perhaps 65, an age few reach. Long-term exposure damaged lungs and eyesight. His vision is failing, his lungs weak from decades of breathing smoke. Arthritis is common from repetitive motion, and his hands, though scarred from countless burns, are stiff in the mornings. He no longer works the furnace directly. Older glass blowers often supervise rather than blew glass, transitioning from physical labor to teaching. His son runs the workshop now, but the father's knowledge remains invaluable. He sits near the furnace, watching a young apprentice struggle with a gather. He can see exactly what's wrong. The apprentice adjusts. The gather stabilizes. The old man smiles slightly. Teaching apprentices increased the workshop status, and he takes pride in passing on knowledge accumulated over a lifetime. This is his role now, not the physical work, but the wisdom that makes good work possible. He thinks back to his own training, to the old master who taught him, his father's father, who came to Alexandria from Syria. Skills were often passed from parent to child, and that knowledge passed through 3 generations now, each adding to what came before. The emotional landscape. What emotions did glassblowers experience? We can only imagine, but human nature hasn't changed. Pride in skilled work was powerful. Creating something beautiful from raw materials through mastery of a difficult craft provided deep satisfaction. When work went well, when a difficult piece succeeded, the sense of accomplishment was genuine. Frustration was inevitable. When pieces failed, when skills didn't improve as hoped, when economic pressures mounted, cracks often formed during cooling if rushed, ruining hours of work. Each failure was a disappointment, even knowing the glass could be recycled. Fear was constant, fear of injury, of fire, of economic failure. Working in a dangerous environment creates tension that never fully disappears. Injuries were treated with household remedies rather than doctors, meaning serious injuries could be catastrophic. Fatigue, both physical and mental, was chronic during furnace campaigns. Workdays could last 10 to 14 hours during peak production. The long hours, the heat, the repetitive work, all wore on body and mind. Family love and responsibility motivated the work. A glassblower labored not just for himself, but to provide for wife and children, to maintain the household, to leave something for the next generation. Community belonging provided meaning. Glassblowers belonged to artisan neighborhoods where mutual support and shared identity made hardships more bearable. Being known and respected among peers mattered. Hope sustained them. Hope that the next commission would be profitable, that apprentices would succeed, that children would have better opportunities than their parents. Moments of beauty and wonder. Amid the heat and hardship, there were moments of genuine beauty. The glow of molten glass, transformed from mundane sand into something luminous and fluid, never lost its fascination. Even after thousands of repetitions, the transformation retained an element of wonder. The play of light through colored glass, especially in Alexandria's brilliant sunlight, created beauty. Holding a finished piece, deep blue from cobalt, or clear and bright after careful decolorizing, up to the light and seeing it glow was a reward for the labor. The moment of completion, when a piece was placed in the annealing chamber and immediate work was done, brought relief and satisfaction. Another object brought into the world, another small victory over material challenges. The question of meaning. Did glassblowers think about the meaning of their work beyond immediate economic necessity? Almost, certainly yes. The transformation of materials, earth and minerals becoming something new through fire, echoed deep fascinations with transformation and creation. Glassblowers were, in a sense, creators. bringing new forms into existence through knowledge and skill. The spread of their work across the known world provided significance. Their vessels traveled to distant lands, were used by a people they'd never meet, became part of lives far beyond Alexandria. This connected them to something larger than individual existence. The teaching relationship between master and apprentice created continuity and legacy. A glassblower was part of a tradition extending into the past and continuing into the future. His work wasn't isolated, but part of an ongoing stream of human creativity. The creation of beauty, even in everyday objects, elevated the work beyond mere production. A well-made bottle had grace. A decorated cup was genuinely beautiful. This aesthetic dimension provided meaning beyond utility. As we reach the end of our journey through a day and a life in Roman Alexandria, what have we learned? We've seen that behind every ancient glass vessel in a museum was a human being. Someone who woke before dawn, working before sunrise to take advantage of cooler morning air. Someone who worked 10 to 14 hours during peak production, learning to judge temperature by color alone through years of experience. Someone who breathed smoke that would eventually damage his lungs, worked in heat that strained his body, and performed repetitive motions that would lead to arthritis. We've learned that glassblowers belong to artisan neighborhoods, where workshops often doubled as family homes, that women sometimes assisted in sorting materials or sales, while children helped with cleaning, and we've seen how their work was embedded in complex economic networks. That natron sources were tightly controlled commodities, giving Egyptian glassmakers advantage. That sand quality directly affected glass clarity, requiring careful sourcing. That fuel shortages could halt production, and rising fuel costs affected vessel prices. That glassblowers sold goods directly or via merchants, serving markets from laborers to aristocrats, with prices varying by clarity, size, and decoration. We've understood their spiritual world, where Egyptian, Greek, and Roman beliefs blended in daily life. How many prayed to household gods for safety, how accidents were sometimes blamed on divine displeasure, while success was seen as favor from the gods. How religious festivals were often the only true days off, providing rare respite from continuous work. We've seen the physical price they paid. That long-term exposure damaged lungs and eyesight. That older glass blowers often supervised rather than blew glass, transitioning from physical labor to teaching as their bodies failed. That injuries were treated with household remedies rather than doctors. That arthritis was common from repetitive motion. That some retired artisans became merchants, while others passed workshops to sons or apprentices. The glassblower's craft was revolutionary in its time. Blowing glass, gathering molten glass on hollow pipes, inflating it with breath through mastery of breath control that was essential for shaping vessels, transformed glass from a luxury into an everyday material. Simple bottles became affordable to common people, while luxury glass could rival silver in cost. Their techniques survived remarkably intact. Alexandrian styles influenced glass across the Roman Empire. The methods survived into Byzantine glassmaking, were inherited by Islamic craftsmen, influenced European production, and remain today. Modern glass blowers still use methods pioneered by these artisans. The basic physics and chemistry of glass haven't changed in 2,000 years. The archaeological evidence they left, failed workshops leaving behind slag and broken glass heaps, furnace remains by which archaeologists identify workshops, production debris revealing techniques, allows us to reconstruct their world in extraordinary detail. And the vessels themselves, especially those that survived in tombs or protected contexts, connect us directly to these ancient craftsmen. When we see a Roman glass bottle in a museum, perhaps shimmering with the iridescent beauty that centuries of burial created, we're seeing the direct product of someone's skill and labor. An object shaped with their breath, formed by their hands, created through knowledge accumulated over a lifetime. These glass blowers were part of something larger, a global economy, technological traditions spanning generations, family and community networks that gave meaning to daily life. They were ordinary people whose extraordinary abilities enriched the world they lived in. What would Marcus think if he could see his work now, displayed in museums, studied by scholars, admired by thousands? Perhaps he'd be surprised that such everyday objects were preserved and valued. Or perhaps he'd be who would continue the craft. They created beauty and utility, contributed to their communities, and left a legacy that endures in every piece of blown glass made today. Their story reminds us that history is made not just by emperors and generals, but by craftsmen and artisans, whose daily labor built and sustained civilization. The glass blower bending over his furnace, judging temperature by color alone, rotating his blowpipe with practiced rhythm, breathing life into molten glass. He was part of the human story, and that story continues. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. May you never look at a piece of glass the same way again.